Hello, I'm Senator Camera Bartolotta, and thank you for joining us on Focus on the 46th. Significant steps are being taken throughout the whole country to address criminal justice reform. Right here in Pennsylvania, some of my colleagues and I are working to advance policies to tackle important issues, such as over-incarceration, addiction and recovery, education and workforce skills during incarceration, and successful rehabilitation and reentry. I am pleased to share that I have co-founded the Senate's first ever Criminal Justice Reform Caucus with Senator Art Haywood. Together, we are partnering with the caucus co-chairs in the House, Representatives Sheryl Delozier and Jordan Harris. Representatives Delozier and Harris will join me shortly, but first, we begin our discussion with Senator Art Haywood. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
You being here.
Glad to be here.
As co-chairs of the Criminal Justice Reform Caucus, you know, as well as I do, when we first announced this, we were inundated with phone calls and requests for meetings and all sorts of things like that. And it's our goal as a bipartisan group to advance these policies addressing this important issue.
Sure.
What can you share with the viewers what
Sure.
it's been like at your office to hear from all of these different organizations and groups?
It's been tremendous. We've heard from groups like Americans for Prosperity, ACLU, Reform, left, right, center. All folks recognize that now is the time to address the challenges we have in the criminal justice system.
Yeah.
And I was just so glad to be a co-chair with you, because this is a place where bipartisan leadership is requested and we're responding.
Absolutely, yes. And it is a bipartisan issue because those that are affected in the criminal justice system, they're not Democrats, Republicans, Independents, or anything. And it really, it goes across a wide spectrum.
Yeah, they're just our neighbors.
Exactly. And sons and daughters and aunts and uncles and family members, absolutely. Can you share with us, too, what your priorities are? What your
I'm
your
glad
goal
to share.
is here?
So really, my top priority is legislation that you and Senator Tony Williams are sponsoring. And that is to deal with the large number of people who are on probation and parole in Pennsylvania. Now, I've heard it's up to 300,000 people, almost as many people as in the city of Pittsburgh, on parole and probation.
Right.
We only got like 40,000 people in prison, 49. So I think we need to look at the caps to make it so we can have some clear end. I want to tell you one story, if I could.
Sure, absolutely.
So we were in the judiciary hearing. We heard from a number of people who testified about the parole and probation system, criminal justice system. A story that touched me was from LaToya Myers. Miss Myers had been incarcerated. She got a sentence of up to 5 years. She served for 3 because she had good behavior. Then she was on parole. And after parole, then she was put on probation for 10 years.
Yeah, it's a revolving door.
15 years. Now, fortunately, she was able to get a hearing and get her probation cut. But this system is challenging. We've got to change it.
The bill that you're talking about is Senate Bill 14 that I'm co-chairing with Senator Williams, and that is probation reform because, as you said, people who are on probation, we keep throwing them back behind bars when they have a technical violation. This is a violation with, if anyone else had committed this offense, it's not a crime. They would never be put behind bars.
Yes.
So we have to take a look at that because I've heard different numbers. We're going to take a look at a clip that we have of an event that we recently held in the Capitol building, and it was calling for reform, probation and parole reform. We had a huge number of folks that came in to share that event with us. As a matter of fact, Van Jones came in and shared this event with us, and it's like a joke. I always tell people, what do Newt Gingrich, Van Jones, the ACLU, and the Koch brothers have in common? And it's criminal justice reform.
And that's the right thing to do.
Yeah, it is. Yes, bipartisan across the entire country. So we're going to take a look at a clip, and we'll be right back.
We think criminal justice reform is not a black or white issue. It's not a Republican or Democratic issue. Look at the sponsors who are here for this event. It's across the ideological spectrum. This is about going forwards, not backwards.
We are all here today to represent what most of Pennsylvanians want and expect from our lawmakers. Common sense reforms to our criminal legal system that work to support productive communities and protect public safety.
If a probationer messes up and violates probation terms in some minor technical way, the solution is not confinement. A sanction that postpones the time for early termination of probation will give the probationer something to work towards. The solution is better guidance with incentives to succeed. Remember, this is a pathway out of the criminal justice system. Let's help probationers succeed. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Senator Bartolotta.
Criminal justice reform is the moral issue of our time. 30 and 40 years from now, people will look back and they will talk about, where were you on criminal justice reform? What did you do to reform a system that has been unjust for far too long? People will ask the question, what did you do to lift people out of poverty? What did you do to help our brothers and sisters who are returning from the system get back into our communities? That will be the question that will be asked of each and every one of us for this, the moral issue of our time.
I think if there was a cap on probation, it would stop impacting us women and our children, allow us to have healthy relationships, and stop questioning ourselves and our self-worth.
This is not about liberals or conservatives, as we said. This is not about Democrats or Republicans. The hell, this ain't even about the Pennsylvanians. This is an American problem. This is about Americans who no longer want a system to stand on their back as they were veterans, as they were mothers, as they were dads, as they were employees, as they were workers, but they fell down for a moment, and for the rest of their life, we're following them around.
So why is there a suburban Republican conservative here taking up this issue? I'm going to give you 3 very quick reasons. I'm a businessman, I'm an American, and I'm a Christian. First of all, as a business... As a businessman, I can assure you, especially now as we have greater and greater shortages in our workforce, our greatest asset in America, as wealthy as we are on so many different fronts, our greatest asset is human capital. And we are wasting human capital when we create this revolving door on the probation end from what our district attorney would call low risk and low need offenders who have served their time. We should be teaching these folks job skills, life skills, because we desperately need them in the workforce as we continue to struggle to fill jobs in manufacturing and other areas. Second of all, I'm an American, and America is a land of opportunity and a land of second chances. And it's also, I want to add, a land of justice. And when we waste valuable resources, courts and probation officers, on low-risk offenders who have served their time, we're taking them away from other more valuable things they could be doing in the criminal justice system. So I see this as a way to enhance our criminal justice system. And lastly, I'm a Christian. And I share that because all of us, and I will raise my hand first and foremost, all of us are in need of redemption, okay?
This is one of those rare and unusual moments in this Pennsylvania Capitol. It's a magical nexus of right and left, rural and urban, Republican and Democrat, all collectively recognizing that the time has come for criminal justice reform, probation reform in particular, and it means for people who are struggling under the burdens of this system, first and foremost, it improves public safety, it creates justice, it leads to independence, and it leads to fairness. And it's exciting to be part of this bipartisan coalition, and it's time to act on SB 14.
Welcome back. Joining me again is Senator Art Haywood, but joining us now are our colleagues from the House of Representatives, Representative Sheryl Delozier and Jordan Harris, who are co-chairs of the Criminal Justice Reform Caucus in the House of Representatives. Can you share with us some of your passions and your missions regarding the Criminal Justice Reform Caucus? And I know that I'm really, really excited that Pennsylvania is the first and only state that has clean slate legislation.
Yes.
Can you share with us
Absolutely.
what that
Well,
means?
thank you for the opportunity, because anytime we can talk about what it is that we're working on, not only making the point of bipartisan, but also bicameral, to be able to say House and Senate working together. Clean slate was one of those objectives and one of those things that we were able to do all together. And clean slate went into effect automatically in June. And so that deals with misdemeanors. That deals with misdemeanors 2s and 3s automatically being sealed. 1s can be petitioned, but there are many that are qualified. So individuals that are coming through the system that are have paid their court fees and fines, their restitution, 10 years and haven't had any interaction. They made a mistake. This was all about giving people a second chance, because people shouldn't be denied from working a job that they absolutely could do or getting a house that they absolutely need for their families.
Right.
So we have a lot of ones that when we were doing it in June, we had that AOPC was going to be taking a look at on a monthly basis. We had 23 million non-convictions, 17 million summaries, 84,000 misdemeanors. All of those things were going to be looked at to be clean slated in the state of Pennsylvania,
And what
and
does
being
that
the
mean?
first.
Okay, sealing records.
Sealing records, so that if you do a
Right.
public search, it would not come up that you had had that conviction. The police, it is a sealing, it's not an expungement. So the difference between that, law enforcement does have the record, or the courts do have the record if something should happen down the road. But the ability for them to get that job or get that apartment shouldn't be denied simply because they made a mistake when they were maybe 19.
And for the last 10 years, they've had a perfectly
Absolutely.
clean record.
Right.
Yes. And they started sealing millions and millions, just as you said.
Like
of those.
2.5 millions a month they were going to be
That's
working
incredible.
on. JNet and PSP, and they've been doing the yeoman's work in trying to get this working since we did that in June. We had a press conference, we were all there, and the governor was there with us to say that, you know, Pennsylvania is something to be proud of, in the fact that we made this happen for the first time in our nation, and there's so many states that are looking to emulate it, as well as our federal government.
Well, and you had said too that it seals their record, but it doesn't expunge it.
Correct.
So I am working on some legislation that will give automatic expungement for certain cases. Again, nonviolent misdemeanors, and two different cases, two different reasons especially. One, if you receive a pardon from the state of Pennsylvania, it is the highest form of forgiveness in the state of Pennsylvania. However, those people who've received pardons don't understand that they still have to go to the counties where they have those dockets, every single one of them, and pay to have those records expunged.
Right.
My bill would make it automatic. And the second part about automatic expungement would be, as you know, some people who get arrested and are cleared.
And that's absolutely, that's what the non-convictions,
Yeah, right,
because it was
non-convictions,
actually
yeah.
something that I learned about very much when we were going through the process, as to how that still hindered people. And these were non-convictions. There was no court hearing. It didn't move any farther
Right.
than the first part. And it's not part of their record, but yet it was. And so that wasn't, you know, making sense. So the ability for us to do the non-convictions, as well as take a look at summaries, as well as take a look at a lot of different opportunities that we had to, again, give some folks a second chance and allow them to be out and be taxpayers, be good family people, be part of our communities. And that's what we want to do, not only with Clean Slate, but also with the probation. And we took a look at that, and we're looking at parole reform. The ability to take a look at these other opportunities is important.
Right, exactly. And another issue too that I know that you're working on, both of you, is the occupational licensure.
Absolutely.
Can you share us a little bit about
Sure.
that issue?
Pennsylvania has more than 25 different occupational licensing boards. So that's nurses, doctors, barbers, cosmetologists. I didn't even know that you needed a license to be an auctioneer in Pennsylvania, but you do.
Yeah.
And
Can't just talk fast.
No,
Exactly.
right. And what happens a lot of times is our law is vague when it comes to a clause about morality, right? So what we've seen from the boards is that there are people with criminal records who are qualified to receive the license, but they're being denied because of something they did in their past. And
That may have nothing to do
Right,
with
absolutely. That's very
nothing to do
important.
with
the
it.
field
Absolutely.
that they have
Yeah, no,
licensing.
listen, I tell
Right.
people all the time, If you have an embezzlement charge and you're trying to become a licensed CPA, well, maybe we need
That's
to
not-
take
yeah.
a
Right.
we need to
That could be a
take a look
problem.
at that.
That could be a problem.
But the only thing I care about when you're cutting my hair is, can you take care of this thinning that's going on up here? Like, I don't care if you may have sold drugs in the past, but the truth is, we have folks who are qualified to be licensed in Pennsylvania, and that's not happening. So what we're looking at doing is strengthening the language and providing direction for these licensing boards, so that a person's criminal background that has nothing to do with what they're going to do in the future doesn't hinder them. Again, this is about people becoming employed. Think about it. You went to school. You passed all your boards. You're ready to get licensed, and then you get stopped because of something you did 10, 15 years ago. It makes absolutely no sense. It's costing taxpayers dollars, and it's also costing us in people capital, because we could have these folks out and being productive and contributing to our society.
Well, it also contributes to recidivism.
Absolutely.
Because if someone can't get a job and pay their bills and support their family, it's just a revolving door.
We want them
it's a
working.
cycle.
We don't want
Yes.
them back in prison.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
whether it's the probation reform that we're talking about, whether it's clean slate, whether it's licensure reform, all of these things have one goal, and that goal is to have people, they're going to come back into our communities.
Right.
The ones that need to stay away and have done horrific crimes need to be where they are in prison. And I don't think anybody can disagree with that. But we want them back in our communities. We want them, many of these people that are in our prisons are parents. We want them out with their families and
Right.
being role models and saying, yes, you can make a mistake and then you can come back out and be a good tax-paying family individual within our communities.
I should share that about half of our prison population is nonviolent offenders.
Right.
And so this population of folks who are coming back to their communities are not the violent folks. And so we've got to provide an opportunity for them. I just want to say one quick thing on the expungement. So I've been a lawyer 30 years. If you've got to go to a court to get your expungement done, it's going to cost you money, it's going to cost you time, and it's going to be delay, and a number of people are not going to be able to go that route because they will not be able to afford it.
Right.
So this automatic expungement, this clean slate, anything that's automatic reduces the judicial process. That's the direction in which we need to go.
Exactly. And to that point, I wanted to ask you about something that happened earlier this year, Senator Haywood. There was a package of bills known as Justice Reinvestment Initiative, or JR2. We sponsored one of those bills in this package. And can you talk about how this new phase of criminal justice reforms can help county governments better assess probation risks and identify offenders who could benefit from intermediate punishment programs?
Sure. So I do want to share that we passed this in the Senate and it's in the House. So hopefully
We're working on it. We're working on it. We know we're working on it.
So we got a few main pieces. One was to provide some guidance to the counties so that when they deal with their probation systems, they can use evidence-based solutions to determine who should get out and who should not. We got 67 counties. That means we got 67 county
Different
probation
ways,
systems.
right.
So you can create some uniformity. I think that's important. Second, we had some sentencing reductions so that if you have some minor crimes, some that you've identified, Representative Delozier, that there's a presumption that after a certain period of time, your sentence is done, you can move out. And finally, on victims' rights, and we were clear that there's a victims' rights movement in the nation, and that victims deserve some additional communication. Victims deserve to be eligible for some broader compensation funds.
Right.
And I think those are some main elements. And we've been told that we can save $30, $40 million a year by the Justice Reinvestment 2 provisions. And so, yes, we want to save money, but most importantly, we want to save lives.
Right, because it's called corrections and reform for a reason. It's not warehousing. And I think we are suffering the result of, in the 90s, lock them up, throw away the key, mandatory minimums, tough on crime. Well, since 1980, I believe the number of incarcerated individuals has increased 400% in Pennsylvania. That's not reducing crime. That's not benefiting the economy or family structure, any of those things. So I think now is the time, and we keep hearing that a lot over and over again. I mean, even at the federal level with the First Step Act, I think the ball is rolling forward, and I truly believe that this bipartisan effort is going to change a lot of lives and reduce crime and reduce recidivism and bring families together.
And I think a lot of it is because it is coming from so many different perspectives. There's a lot of different ideas. And I think having that dialogue, and we've talked about that many times, Jordan and I, when we've been out, is if you just assume someone's a no, or you just assume that it's not going to be an agreeable point, that you just never have that conversation. And so people just say, oh, well, of course they're never going to agree with me on this. But I think that actually taking that step and saying, where do you stand on this? What are your thoughts? Are you going to agree on 100%? No. And you know, whether it's any of us that represent very different districts, we may not agree on every point, but the basic premise of the fact of understanding these folks are coming back into our communities. Government needs to get out of the way of allowing them to succeed.
Yeah, we've learned a lot. I mean, particularly with probation and parole reform, a number of states are way ahead of us. And we've learned that it will not decrease our public safety. We're all, I mean, public safety is
Absolutely. We want to clean, we want to be safe. We want our folks to be safe.
But we can do both.
But that's why in the House we have House Bill 1555, which is our probation reform piece. And Senator, you talked a little bit about this, but you know, we're looking at a predictability scale with regards to the time people have to be on probation. What we've seen, I could tell you in my region of the state, is that many folks on probation are in like what I call a perpetual state of probation, where a technical violation happens, they go before the judge, and you know, a person who had 5 years probation made it through 4, got a technical violation, can get an additional 5 years. That makes absolutely no sense. And quite honestly, we're costing the taxpayers money. We should be using our probation system to supervise people that need supervision. That's where we should spend our tax dollars. And those that don't, we should move them along and get them back into our communities. I would much rather spend the $100 million that we're spending on technical violations on roads and bridges across the Commonwealth. I think most of our
or family
taxpayers
counseling,
would
or juvenile
absolutely.
counseling,
Absolutely.
or drug and alcohol.
We can find many ways to spend the
We can
dollars.
yeah, exactly, and put it to good use with a good return on that
Absolutely.
investment.
Absolutely.
Well, because they talk about 250,000 people per day are on supervision, and so when we're talking about that amount of people, we need to make sure that we're putting the money towards the folks that really need to be supervised, versus folks that maybe could be let off and said, okay, you've done your time, you've paid your debt to society, and you need to go and be successful elsewhere.
And now, single mom of 3 working at McDonald's who can't go to her probation hearing or can't get to the phone in time, she doesn't have to worry about being thrown back in jail because she didn't make that phone call.
So understanding the process is, I think, important, and making sure we can make some changes.
And we could talk about this all day long, but we only have a few more minutes left, and I would love to revisit this topic because, again, there's so many other things, and we want to catch people up as we move forward. In closing, I want to say thank you again to my colleagues, Senator Haywood and Representatives Delozier and Harris, for joining me today on Focus on the 46th. I would also like to conclude by sharing some information about the Pennsylvania Prison Society, and I was just appointed to the board of that organization. Founded in 1787, the Pennsylvania Prison Society can credit its inception to individuals who signed the Declaration of Independence and later drafted the U.S. Constitution. Its mission is to advocate for humane prisons and a rational approach to criminal justice. It is tasked as the Commonwealth's official organization charged with sending individuals into prisons to monitor the conditions and the treatment of inmates. The Prison Society also helps provide services for families, such as transportation to corrections facilities, mentoring programs for the incarcerated, and guidance on re-entry programs to help reduce future crimes and restore communities and families. If you think these services might be helpful to you or a loved one, you can learn more at www.prisonsociety.org. Lastly, I'd like to thank the fine individuals who work at our state prisons, particularly SCI Green, located in the 46th Senatorial District, which I represent. The criminal justice system is complex, and our corrections facilities would not work without the hardworking men and women who serve there. This is all the time we have for today. If you have any questions about our criminal justice reform efforts or about any state government issue, I'd like to hear from you. The contact information will be displayed momentarily. I'm Senator Camera Bartolotta. Thanks so much for watching.